Welcome to Act Pod, a podcast show that sheds light on the stories and impact of the social sector. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. Let's begin the change.
Hello, everyone. Fantastic to be here again. My name is Usai Aliye. I'm the CEO of Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation, Act Foundation. And I'm so excited to be back. I've been missing for a few months, but now I've bullied everybody. I'm coming back with a bang. And this morning, I'm having conversations with two amazing women, and we're talking about collaborating for change and the dynamics that takes the public, the private, and the social sector to work together to bring about change. And so I'm speaking today with Miss Titilayo Oshodi, and she's the special advisor on climate change and circular economy to the governor of Lagos State. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then, of course, I have Igazeuma Okoroba, the group head of sustainability of Dangote Cement. Welcome. When we in the last few months, or even maybe over a year now, we've been hearing a lot of conversations about partnerships and collaborations and the importance of it. And even I've spoken about it so much in my office, I think they're even now beginning to roll their eyes. But I see the essence of why, even in this season, that no one can work on its own. No organization, no matter how big you are, you need that, almost like a trial, the full picture. And I always say that if you see this one going here, this one going, and there's no one to link at the bottom, that house will fall. Once there's no foundation, the house will fall. If you don't have the side walls, it's going to fall. Then can you imagine there's no roof? When the rain comes, what happens? So collaboration is so key. But let me come to you first, Igazeuma. What do you think is, and why do you think is necessary for us, even in the social sector, or even for any of us involved in change and impacts? Why do you think it's necessary for us to even think about collaboration?
So you got that right. Collaboration is the heart of solving problems, life's problems. If you're in the social sector, private sector, I'm not sure that any leg of that tripod can really, really stand. And why is that? It's because you don't have it all. It's because every sector is going to have its unique strengths, it's going to have its own gaps, it's going to have its own needs, it's going to have its own context and its own, environment, very specific environment. And the truth is that even though you are in the entire value chain of a business, or you control an entire life cycle of a social sector, you are definitely going to find out somewhere along the line that there are externalities, there are dependencies that you don't control. And that's where collaboration is absolutely necessary.
I like that word, that you do not control. And we don't control a lot.
Right.
You might assume that you're a big player, or you might even assume that you're government, but you still have no control over some things that do happen. And you realize that you just can't do it on your own. So let me come to you, Titi. What do you think, and how do you think government must come into play here? And why it's essential for even every one of us, regardless of how small a social enterprise is, that it must bring government on the table, or by the table, or with the table, or however it is, to talk about partnerships and collaboration.
So I think that for anything to be sustainable and for it to have longevity, there must be a level of institutionalization. And what government brings into the table is that credence, the ability to have something that is legitimized. Because a lot of enterprises have the capacity to develop by themselves. But how much can you do if within the global space, for instance, you want to be visible, you want to be able to have that creed, you want to have, the ability to declare that you're competent and you can work without walls, So when government is involved in your operations, in your systems, in your processes, then it gives it that legitimized standing and positioning. Also, it helps because your brand can be positioned as deliberate about the operational framework of a society, within the society.
Yeah.
You can say within the space of sustainability, you can say that you have the framework because you are taking fiscal policies, fiduciary policies into consideration when you're making your decisions. For those who work within that sustainable space, there's a framework that is called the Economic, Environmental, Social, and Governance Framework, the EESG.
Yeah.
And within that space, you need to have a thumb or some form of approval or some form of access or validation from the government, for you to be able to say that my business is standing strong and it can stand well against global partners as well.
So I mean, I was thinking about this, and just looking through we in the social sector. I mean, one of the things that the social sector used to always believe that we are solving all the problems. Everybody should give us some form of almost a deference, and I'm always like, no. Regardless of what you're doing, you have to pull in the public sector.
Right.
You have to understand that the private sector is also important because they must understand what the issues and the challenges are, and be able to come to your rescue when you need rescuing. And as you mentioned, the validation of even the public, of us as social sector, when we talk about now ESGs and all it's the validation that comes into play when the government says these things are essential, it's needed, and they put a stamp of approval. So we have to think past the fact of, we feel to ourselves that we are bringing everything, all the value. Nobody can bring all the value to the table. We all have to sit around the table. We have to have the conversations. We have to bring the solutions to the communities and bring the best solutions that there are. So when we're talking about collaborations now, how do we approach it? What is important for you? Let me start with Titi. What's important for you in the public sphere? That if we want to do something now, we're coming into Lagos State and we want to do something on climate, what is important for the government to know about? What do we need to do for us to have that relationship with you?
Thank you for that question, because I think it's important that we begin to lay bare the factors that are necessary for that cohesion to be as effective as possible. First and foremost, ideas must be technically viable. Right, the concepts, the initiatives, the solutions must be in itself technically viable. And what do I mean by that? There are lots of times when we create solutions or we pull solutions from climes that are different from us. And because of the non-adaptation of those solutions for the climate that is unique to us, it's not technically viable. Within the space of transportation, for instance, I'd heard, and this is straight from the source, that our cowrie card was actually designed by young, just freshly left out of school graduates from Unilag. And this is after they had made tremendous efforts on creating cards that were integrated into the transport modal system. And they kept on going off. They couldn't sustain it because those cards were designed according to the level of bandwidth of service, internet service in the West, and how
our community
exactly, how erratic our own service is here. So these young boys came and they preferred that solution, and they said, listen, we don't even want you to pay us. Just try this card and use it and see how it would work. And at the end of the day, we have over 4 million people who work on that cowrie card, who, it is not only usable, utilized across all of the intermodal transportation, the road, the rail, and the waterways. It also has a financial functionality to it right now, and it has no chip on it, right? So these are the things. It must be technically viable. It must be organizationally implementable. Organizations have to be able to come on it. That solution has to be appealing to every stakeholder within the value chain of that solution, because we're a ethnic, we're multidimensional, we're multi-valued
Multi.
society.
Yes.
So you must factor in all of those multi-layered, needs
Yes.
before you can declare it as a solution that is implemented. So there's the stakeholders, there's the technically viability, but there's also the political acceptability of it.
Which is also very
It
important.
is very, very key. Why? Every faction, every facet have their, like my sis said, they have their interests, they have their incentives, they have their agenda. And I'm not saying this in a condescending way or derogatory way. Everybody wants to be part of a system, right? And they have what is peculiar and unique to them. And their voices have to be heard through processes and solutions. So it's important that these factors are effectively connected to each other. They must be cohesive and they must also be well balanced so that there's justice, there's fairness, and there's equity.
Right.
I mean, this just, I know it's so interesting hearing you speak, because we, once you sit at the table and coming up with a strategy, you're just thinking very, very, this is what
Limited
I'm thinking,
scope.
very limited scope. And then you are talking multi. And then that's where the issue is. And that's where people cannot really understand. Why are they doing things this way? They don't understand. But because of all the number of things you have to think about.
Absolutely.
And then the public sector have to think about, because they're thinking more in terms of a whole lot of people.
Absolutely.
That all the stakeholders that they have to bring into bear.
Yes.
And in collaborating and in partnering, you must make sure that everyone has a voice.
Right.
Everyone must be able to speak if they are willing to speak.
No matter how little.
No matter how little. You must hear them.
Right.
You must hear them. And I know the private sector is a bit different. Of course, you have your own stakeholders as well, but maybe the bottom line is also more. Let me say more important, but it's also important.
Right.
So when you are doing collaborations and you're thinking, okay, we want to go and do things in Ogun State, for example, what comes into bear, and what also must the social sector look at? So I'm coming to meet you and we want to do a program in Ogun State. What are the things that we should be thinking about?
That's such an interesting question, because when I hear the social sector and, the government as well talk about ESG, what it tells me is that we are making a lot of progress on collaboration, because that concept in the first place came from private sector. The private sector right now, I would say we are coasting along on our collaboration, because the language that we speak, the social sector is integrating and the government is integrating. But what are those things that we really, really look for? Number one is enterprise value. That's the number one thing that every business really wants to achieve when they want to collaborate. So when we look at the social sector, or any other collaborator for that matter, we think about shared value. How are we adding value to them, and how are they adding value to us? So the political capital that you spoke about, that's a key area that business wants to harness. And then we talk about social capital. When it comes to building trust, especially with communities, we want to partner or collaborate with, the civil society, NGOs in a way that they can tell our stories, or they can show us or point us in the right direction. Issues like human rights, issues like labor, those are issues where there's stronger competence in the social sector than in the private sector. So we want you to meet that gap for us, where we are unable, to build capital in those areas. And of course, political capital as well, to bring all the other stakeholders that might have gray areas, might have trust issues, might have, even when it comes to accessing finance, investors are asking loads of questions to businesses these days. And of course, we talked about the endorsement from the government, also the endorsement that comes from a reputable civil society implementing a project for private sector, for instance. So these are key indicators of who a perfect collaborator for private sector will be. How can you improve my enterprise value? What capital are you bringing? Or natural capital, for instance, communities, a lot of them are custodians.
Yes.
Of natural capital. So if I do have an environmental NGO or activists or advocacy groups that are working on environment, there's a lot of natural capital that you're bringing to my business, which I'm converting to resources and is leading to enterprise value. So always think about a private sector partner in terms of, okay, how is my collaboration going to support them to improve their enterprise value?
Yeah, and it's really important in terms of the shared value, because really there's no business that can. And I always tell social enterprises, you're also a business.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. So
Absolutely.
you have to think
Absolutely.
you have to have the business cap on for your
Yes.
business, for your social enterprise to be sustainable in the long
Sustainable,
term.
yes.
And we need to think through that process, that what value do you bring to the table
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to partnerships and collaboration, because it's really, really important that you must give value and also get value back. So, and in doing that, we must understand what everybody else is looking
Looking
for,
for.
to get there. So
Right.
let me go to the complexities of partnerships and collaborations. And I mean, we're having a business breakfast dialogue that we do every year, and that's going to take place in October. And I'm hoping that they will be able to put that information out there. But even in doing that, one of the things that we always realize is the complexities that come with even just kind of bringing everyone to the same
Together.
room, yes, and everybody understanding that we don't always have to speak the same language. But we know that we want impact regardless of it. Private sector is looking for impact as well. Impact, even in their bottom line, is also impact.
Right.
The government is also looking for impact, because the more their people are happy, the more they do well as a government. And the political stakeholders you're talking about are also very pleased. But we know that the complexities come into play as well in just even arranging that to be in that. But when we're looking at the different priorities and approaches, what are some of the biggest challenges you see when it comes to collaborating and partnering for anything that still brings value?
From a government perspective, it's so funny how your mind shifts around when you're in a place where you're seen as a leader. You must continuously view situations from a holistic perspective. You can't skew to a particular paradigm or a mindset or you must be grounded ethically. And one of the key things that I have learned is the word moral trade-off, right? And it's a negotiation process, and it is not something that you compartmentalize and say, this is how I'm going to work it. Every time I'm faced with a project, or every time I want to execute a project, I already have a mind mapping session that gives me a dovetail ability to see who my stakeholders are and where, what, and when do I have to sort their incentives and motives and agenda? When do I have to pay attention to their areas or their scope or their emotions? Whether we like it or not, there are negotiations per stakeholder, per layer, per time in a project. So the art, it's an art. You continue to sharpen it. You continue to work on it. You continue to ask for wisdom. I'm speaking, absolute reality right now. No holds bar. I continue to ask for wisdom as to how to tackle every layer and every stakeholder at each point in time. We just finished a project called EcoCirculate. We're essentially using waste as a currency for communities. So we're saying that you can resourcefully validate your waste that you
I saw
generate,
that. Yes,
and you can get
yes.
something in return.
Yes.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
It sounds like a technically viable
Idea.
right? However, in that value chain,
Okay.
I have the local government people to deal with. I have the
scavengers.
LCDS people to deal with. I have the PSPs who already are on the street and are making money
Right.
off of packing load.
Exactly.
So I'm telling the people who
Now
are
you
supposed to be
cannot-
giving them that
Right.
they will not have, these wastes that they can
Materials.
use, materials to go to the landfill. I have Loma, who's also, reforming the space to help people to gather their garbage. I have partners in terms of enterprises who are doing businesses in this place, and they require people to come and dispose of their waste. They're collectors, they're segregators, they're off-takers.
Right.
Do you understand?
Of
I
course.
have the youth who are seeking employment,
Employment.
So you have
who I'm opening up the market for them to say there
Right.
are wastes, you know, in indigent areas, in communities, in
And we
rural
can go and
areas.
harness.
You can go and go. You can open up. We can open up the market for you
Yes.
to establish a collection system. Do you understand? I have, you know, even enterprises who are already working and are saying we need to scale our business. We need access to funds. We need to be able to expand our operations.
The
You know,
complexity.
it is complex.
It is complex. And I mean, and even just even breaking that down for us is really complex. And I like there's a book called The Art of Negotiation. But even thinking about it as a negotiation in your mind, makes you realize that you can't always win everyone. So you have to give room. I like when you said the when, the how,
Yes.
and the what.
And the what?
So once you do that, it enables you to realize that Osai might win this one this time,
Right.
or she can take
Yes.
50%, and I'll be fine with it.
So
Because
trade-offs.
Yes, straight up.
Trade
And
off.
because my stakeholder in this particular thing will be okay in the season
Yes.
compared to the next. Because you know that, and then
Right.
also because you go in thinking that there will be more negotiations.
Yes.
So we don't always think to ourselves, this is the only one we're gonna do.
So it's not, there's no emotion to that.
No.
You are purely objective
Because
in your
and it's the
decision
benefit
making
of
process, and it
everyone.
is on the benefit
Okay.
of everyone.
So we understand that it's complex. We see it's complex. But we also see the benefits that comes at the end of the day when everyone feels that there's a value and they're bringing
Then
and
they're
they're all
bringing.
gaining something. So from your own point of view, and and the communities that you are serving, what do you think is, I mean, it's still, yes, we have to agree that it's complexities.
Right.
How do you break down that complexity to make it easier?
You see,
for us to
the
enjoy?
language of the complexity I just kept hearing as Titi was talking. I said, this is risk.
Yes,
This is risk
yes,
management.
yes.
You know. And we try to break it down. And that's really where, the government does an amazing job. Lagos State does a great job in providing frameworks,
Yes.
regulations, policy papers or whatever that we can start with to reduce the risks, to reduce the complexities.
Yes.
You talk about compliance, we talk about all the
So
agencies
that
coming
makes
to
it
make
easier.
sure.
Yes.
So first we can start by ticking the boxes.
Yes.
It breaks down the complexity.
Yes.
When you try to put everything together, starting from a risk perspective. And I hope that that's something that NGO, civil society
Yes.
can really begin to see, that this is how private sector thinks. We are thinking a lot in terms of risks and opportunities
Yeah.
and impact.
Yeah.
So you see, where you come from an impact lens, I am coming from
A
risk,
risk,
opportunities,
opportunity.
and impact.
Yes.
So don't worry if business tells you we are making impact, we're making impact.
Yes.
Remember that
That's-
the risk,
That's so important.
remember
Yes.
that the risk is
Yes.
at the front of their mind, and
Yes,
business
yes,
is
yes,
voicing,
yes.
we want to make
Yes,
impact.
yes,
But the first question before any budget
Impact.
is released, resources are released for making that impact, is what is the risk?
Yes. And then you begin to.
And then you begin first by ranking the risks and
Exactly.
eliminating the risks.
Eliminating them.
Why do I need to build or construct this infrastructure in this community as opposed to this community? They are both impactful.
Yeah.
They're both impactful. But for one community, it might be a higher risk because it's a transit community and perhaps the infrastructure might not be sustainable in the end. They might have the need. But in another community, it might be more sustainable because there is some level of ownership and the communities.
Yes.
We've heard of some
Yes.
kinds of projects that
Yeah.
companies would even implement as CSR, and then you come back and the owners of the project will tell you, we left it for you.
Yes. Many
I
times.
mean,
That's true.
it's your project. We
yeah.
left it for you, and that investment is gone, and probably it can lead to a disruption in your business
disruption,
again,
yes,
becoming
yeah.
because the community doesn't believe that you have done
Yes.
anything.
And that's
so
that's
the risk
all. Yes, all those
Exactly.
lists, the
always-
stakeholder mapping, and all those things
Yeah.
are important.
So the business always wants to be able to first address the risks
before we even begin
Before
to do
before we
anything.
begin to do
to
anything.
I like the different languages because you were talking more risk. You talked about mind mapping,
Yes.
and bringing all the stakeholders and letting them have a voice.
Yeah, negotiation.
Negotiation.
Yes, negotiation.
And we in the social sector are always thinking, what is the impact we're going to make? But everything is
Everything,
important.
yes.
Everything is important. Okay, so looking ahead, because I know we're shutting down soon, and this is like it just goes so fast, and there's so much I want to ask,
much
but
to
I
ask.
mean, I'm hoping that we're all getting something here. Looking ahead, what do we see as the most promising area when we're looking at collaborations and just drawing and ticking all the boxes in the private sector, in the public
Right.
sector, in the social sector, in creating some form of social change? What do you feel is the most promising for every one of us to sit at the table and to bear in mind that this is important for us to be able to do together? Let me start from you.
Right. So I'm just thinking of Titi first now. And I'm thinking, having listened to all the amazing initiatives that you have shared,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we can really do to move our collaboration forward with the government is to think about ways that we can cost effectively or let's say optimize cost. We know that cost is always a factor. Optimize cost in bringing solutions to a greater number of populations. While I may be looking at a population of maybe my beneficiaries or the communities that are directly impacting resources. Or supply my own supply chain, I would really like to leverage. I would like to leverage your own scope, your network, so that we can scale a solution that we have perhaps piloted, But you know what? That's not even enough. Even when you give me that platform to scale that solution, I actually really need the social sector to come and do a kind of due diligence that I, as a business, I cannot do. So I need all of us to understand the unique skills that we have, the unique potentials that we bring to the table. I cannot do that due diligence that the social sector comes and tells me, look, I need to do this analysis to first see that this is viable, this actually meets the needs of the people. So if you see that business is competent in cost optimization and perhaps process efficiency, and I see that you have the network, you have the political capital, you have the population, you have the numbers, okay, I should be willing to step back and trust the expertise of my collaborator to bring that in. We need to be able to split the idea of a private sector wanting to do all of it.
Yes. Doesn't work that way anymore.
It doesn't work. So I want to recognize that strength that, Titi's organization is going to bring to me. And I also want to be able to leverage on your own strength because it's going to be a win-win at the end of the day. But I think that no sector should believe that they've got it all because you have all the resources. No, I need to be able to identify your competence, your expertise, and leverage. Be able to share. I think that's a major thing. Can I split my resources with the government and with the social sector so that we're having a well-rounded, wholesome impact?
Fantastic.
There's no way an economy can stand without the effective collaboration between the government, the business, and the people.
Yes.
Right? That tripartite must be equally it must be equalized, before you start off anything that will be sustainable. Now, in line with what you have said, I like to bring things into a practical sense, so that it's more indelible in the mind. For instance, if we go and activate a community, right? Within that community, as you have said, you just don't want to walk away after a project has been activated and those people do not have a sense of ownership to be able to run it and ensure that they are sustaining it for their own livelihood and the quality of the life that they live, right? Now, if we had done Badagry as of today, people went there over the weekend and they were able to convert their waste to collect transfer into their account. They were able to collect food, bag of rice and bag of gari. They were able to get, some form of health scheme. In the name of collaboration, businesses do not necessarily have to give fund.
Yeah.
In the name of CSR or ESG,
Right.
engendering social impact can be through health insurance scheme. It can be through subsidized social amenities, for the
Right.
people in that
Right.
space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It could be just providing infrastructure. If we provide a grounded global 20th century global infrastructure for waste collection, and have it tokenized in a way that people can go to maybe a school
Of course.
and put their clothes or put their plastic or put their e-waste, and then they can get a token.
Yeah.
And that token they're able to walk through to a bank or a financial system
Yes.
and have it converted into money. That's social impact.
Yes.
That's environmental impact.
Yeah.
Because we're pulling,
Resources from
waste
different- yes.
from households
Yes.
into the community,
And-
into a converged point, a designated point, where government also has reduced cost, in collection.
Yeah.
They have reduced cost in infrastructure. They have reduced cost in enforcement as well. People are behaving climate friendly. They understand the need to improve their health because they're pulling these
And
things
the
and then,
mix is just-
and the mix.
yes.
And so you see where it is that private sector begins to, because they are the capitalists, they are
Yes.
the business people.
Yeah.
They want to make profit. So what do I say? The person who is, who have positioned his own collection center in a school, and it is possibly run or oiled by a Dangote foundation,
Yes.
right? Knows that they have to give report of their ESG contributions with that place,
Yes.
right? And then they also collect the kind of money that will be used in that ecosystem. Jobs will be created. Businesses will expand. Dangote Foundation will also report it and say this is as much contribution we
yeah.
have done to reduce,
Right. Shared value.
shared
Shared
value.
value.
So, it's a lot that can be done.
In
in
fact,
that space.
it's as if we need to do part 2. I'm bringing them back.
Right.
Because there's so much,
There's so much.
what we've learned today, so much that we know, and we know that
And
this is so important.
I'm coming.
And the mapping,
Welcome.
everything, every single thing. I just want to say thank you. Thank you
so
for
much.
coming to have a conversation with
you.
us today. And I'm also hoping that even as the sector and everyone that's listened to it, we realize that there's so much value that we can all bring to the table.
Together.
And there's so much shared value, but also the fact that there's so much that we can also gain. So value on the table, you also take your value back. But we must also come with a mind that is flexible enough to learn,
Absolutely.
to unlearn, and to move forward. So thank you, everyone,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm looking forward to having you again. But of course, we have the Breakfast Dialogue coming up October 10th. Do get all the information, and I'm sure that they're going to be flashing it in, and join us. There's so much to learn. There's so much to unlearn, and then we need to move forward as a collective. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Act Pod. For inquiries and feedback, please reach us on actpod@actrustfoundation.org. Follow us on social media at actfoundation_ on Instagram and Twitter, and Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation on Facebook. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. Act Pod, our story, our continent.